Thank you very much for inviting me to speak this evening. Can you hear me okay in the back? Fine, thank you. Well, good evening. It's nice to see you nice. It is an honour for me to speak to you this evening. I'm going to speak about voice hearing through the ages. I'm particularly pleased to speak in Narberth. Narberth is an important area of Wales mentioned in the Mabinogion. And also it is the town where Waldo Williams, the Welsh language poet and voice hearer, received his secondary school education in the last century. And also Narberth is the home of Jodie Marie, a popular UK young contemporary pop singer. Voice hearing is the hearing of a voice or voices inaudible to others. It is not necessarily a sign of severe mental illness, in inverted commas. Triggered by bereavement, physical illness, unemployment, divorce, and or some other traumatic event, voice hearing is experienced by 10 to 15% of the general population. 2 to 5% of the population hear a voice or voices at any one given moment in time. 1% of the world population are labelled by psychiatry as schizophrenic, in inverted commas. 53% of people who are labelled by psychiatry as schizophrenic, in inverted commas, are voice hearers. Voice hearers, and what I say this evening may be right, it may be wrong. I leave it for you to think about, if you could, in the next 20 years or so. But I believe that voice hearers have a contribution to make to society, or they have the potential to make a contribution to society. According to David Horrobin, in his book, The Madness of Adam and Eve, How Schizophrenia Shaped Humanity, people have been hearing a voice or voices since 100,000 BC. According to Julian James, in his book, The Origin of Consciousness, in the breakdown of the bicameral mind, people have been hearing voices since 15,000 BC. In other words, voice hearing is something which has existed amongst people for many thousands of years, and voice hearers shift human consciousness. Voice hearers from the past and present include the prophet Ezekiel, the prophet Isaiah, St. Paul, Teresa of Avila, Zoe Wanamaker and Sir Anthony Hopkins, the Welsh actor. The cave paintings of early man in the south of France and in northern Spain were, according to David Horrobin in his book, those cave paintings were inspired by voice hearers. In my opinion, and I might be right, I might be wrong, voice hearers are, in my opinion, saints, prophets, shaman, gurus and or geniuses, or the potential for such, as writers, poets, dancers, actors, actresses, artists, musicians, composers, singer-songwriters, believers and or scientists. Voice hearers have been or are people of worth, or the potential for such. Nancy Pelosi, the minority leader of the Democrats in the House of Representatives in the United States of America, is a voice hearer. When she first went into the White House to meet President George W. Bush, she heard, she says, a deceased suffragist say to her, "We have a seat at the table." In other words, women now have an important political role in the USA and in the Western world, as we know. Voice hearing is traditionally equated with schizophrenia, in inverted commas. However, this is a mistake. Schizophrenia is traditionally equated with violence. This too is a mistake. Schizophrenics, in inverted commas, are not, generally speaking, axe-wielding killers. For every person killed in the UK by someone with a diagnosis of schizophrenia, in inverted commas, drink drivers kill approximately 24. The Hearing Voices approach to mental health, that is to say, an approach to mental health which allows one in a group or one-to-one to talk about one's visions and voices. The Hearing Voices approach to health is an idea whose time has arrived, I believe. Established in effect in 1987 by Patsy Hager, a voice hearer from Holland, and Professor Dr. Marius Rom, and influenced by Julian James's book, The Origin of Consciousness in the Breakdown of the Bicameral Mind. The Hearing Voices movement is a large and successful and stable global movement which humanizes and sensitizes further mental health service provision. Professor Dr. Marius Rom and Sandra Escher's pioneering 1993 book, published by Mind, and it's particularly pleasing to see Tracy Price here this evening, the director of Pembrokeshire Mind and Carmarthen Mind. I say that Accepting Voices, that's to say the 1993 Mind publication, written, or rather edited, by Rom and Escher, took the idea of voice hearing beyond the illness model and created a new reality for voice hearers, one in which voice hearers had the opportunity, if possible, to recover. Rom and Escher's 1995 book, Making Sense of Voices, facilitated the process of further humanizing and sensitizing the issue of voice hearers in the field of mental health care. Thanks to the pioneering courage of Professor Dr. Marius Rom, Sandra Escher, Ron Coleman, and Paul Baker, who is here this evening, Eleanor Longden, Rufus May, and other leaders in the Hearing Voices movement, great things can be achieved. There are now 26 Hearing Voices networks in 26 countries of the world, including Australia, New Zealand, Denmark, and England and Wales, and the USA. There are at least 180 Hearing Voices groups in England alone, and there are 13 plus Hearing Voices groups in Wales. More than 30 years ago in the Western world, one would have been locked up, as you well know. One would have been locked up in a psychiatric hospital or in a psychiatric unit for a considerable number of years for admitting that one heard a voice or voices. The Hearing Voices movement is, as I mentioned, an idea whose time has arrived. In the words of Victor Hugo, the French writer in the 19th century, there is no thing stronger than all the armies in the world, and that is an idea whose time has come. It is an honour for me to speak here tonight at Narberth. My parents and my auntie used to live near Narberth, and I have special fond memories of Narberth as a town. And Walter Williams, possibly the greatest Welsh language poet of the 20th century, was a voice hearer, and I'm going to read a poem. No, I'm going to read the first verse of a poem, firstly in Welsh and then in English, about voice hearing. The poem is called Can I mi wynt. Can I mi wynt o'r dyfder ag o'r dechrau. Can I mi y dychymyg mwyar maes. Harddach na'r golau'n hael dy cerddi tywyll. Y bardd y tu hwnt yn geia ym mhob oes. Sing to me, wind, from the depths, from the beginning. Sing, imagination greatest of all, your dark songs lovelier than sunlight. Poet in every age, beyond what we know. In other words, great poets are voice hearers often, and they shift consciousness. Can I wind up there now, if that's okay? In conclusion, people have been hearing a voice or voices for thousands of years. Voice hearing is not necessarily, in conclusion, a sign of severe mental illness, in inverted commas. Voice hearers may have a contribution to make to society and the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. Very powerful. I think the may have, they must have.
Right.
I don't think it's may, I think it's must have. I think they have a huge contribution. Right, thank you everybody. This draws an end to this AGM. I just want to say thank you very much for